Hi, my name is Jeff Cohen, Vice President of Marketing for Seller Labs, and today we're going to talk about communicating with customers and complying with Amazon's policies. I am your host, and my experience in the Amazon space has been working with sellers since 2012 in the Amazon Marketplace system and e-commerce retail since 2005. Seller Labs has been in the Amazon Marketplace for over 7 years. We've been working directly with Amazon over the years to understand policy and develop software to help sellers like you perform better and generate more sales. So what are we going to talk about today? Today we're going to talk about buyer-seller messaging. Today we're going to talk about best practices. And today we're going to talk about how you can communicate with your customers. I want to start with a little game of true or false to understand what you know and don't know about Amazon's policies. We did a survey of over 500 Amazon sellers asking them these questions. So, since I can't officially ask you, why don't you ask yourself to take this test? Now be honest. True or false? Sellers may email buyers and directly request product reviews. When we asked this question, we got a 50-50 answer between true and false. Sellers are very confused about whether they can communicate with their buyers and ask. So what does Amazon's policy actually say? Amazon's policy states that you can communicate with your buyers using proactive messages via the buyer-seller messaging application and ask for a product review. That's a big distinction you need to make. Asking for multiple reviews will get your account restricted. Question 2. When a seller emails a buyer about a product, is it okay to reference the product by including a link to the product detail page? Now, this overwhelmingly was answered true by people in our survey. Yes, you are correct. It is true. When you email and ask for communication with your customer, you can reference the product that they bought. But be careful that you don't reference other products or that you don't reference other pages on Amazon. Communicating with a buyer, it's important to understand that you're communicating with them on the product that they purchased. So don't start getting carried away and communicate other pages or other links off of Amazon. Now this one always kind of confuses me because I don't understand why people still get this question wrong. So the question is it acceptable to add a coupon for a future purchase when communicating with a customer who's purchased from you in the past? You can see from our survey that 50% of the people thought that it's true, while 50% thought that it was false. This is absolutely false. You cannot do any marketing or promotion when communicating with a customer. And this is very critical that you understand this, because if you offer a coupon in your email or you offer a discount for a future purchase, you're violating the guidelines for buyer-seller messaging. So question number 4, sellers may only send one message per order requesting a product review. I kind of gave this answer away earlier, so hopefully you did better than the people who took this survey. And some people get a little confused because you're only allowed to send one request for a product review, but you can send more than one email if necessary to your buyer. Just don't send multiple emails to your buyer asking for product reviews, and ensure that the messages that you're sending are critical and important and about the product purchased. Question number 5. Tell me if this statement would violate the guidelines. If you're happy with your purchase, leave a review. If you're unhappy with your purchase, click here, contact us so we can make it right. Most people thought that this statement was a violation of terms of service, but you can see that 35% still said it wasn't. But this is absolutely true. Amazon does not want you using what's called suggestive language to divert traffic one direction or another. So if you're using any type of if-then statement within your communication, it's probably something you need to stop immediately, or you might get restricted in your ability to communicate with your customers. Let's go to question number 6. If a buyer leaves you a negative review, is it okay to resolve their problem and then politely ask them to remove this review? You can see here again, everybody was confused. 50-50 people saying it's true and it's false. It's absolutely false. Within Amazon's review guidelines, they state that you cannot ask for a review to be changed. So it's critical that as a customer service, you still offer the refund, offer a new product, or whatever your policy is when somebody has a problem with your product, but do not ask them to change their review. As of today, and I state as of today because buyer-seller guidelines are constantly changing, and it's your duty as a seller to understand these guidelines and to ensure that you are not violating them. Today, you can send an automated email using either buyer-seller messaging or a third-party tool like Seller Labs in the Amazon App Store. You can ask a customer to leave a review, but only do it once. You can provide customer service and value to your buyer. It's part of the Amazon flywheel, and it's something that should be part of your everyday business. And you can build brand awareness. But if you're going to include a logo, do not include your email address, your phone number, or a website. And if your logo includes any of those things, make sure you remove it or you'll be violating the policies. Seller Labs, through our product Feedback Genius and our communication center, has been working on sending millions of messages every month and working with tens of thousands of customers. So what have we learned from all of this information? What does it do to help you in better communicating with your customer? The first question we get from a lot of our customers is about the open rate. They always want to know, should I have a 5% open rate, a 30% open rate, a 20% open rate? I like to say it depends. It depends on the type of product that you're selling. It depends whether somebody would find your information critical to the purchase of their product. If you buy a very complicated product like a ping pong table and you got a message, maybe you're apt to open that message. If you get a very commoditized product like toothpaste, maybe you're not going to be looking at every email that comes about your toothpaste. Subject lines with the highest open rate typically include personalization, a reference to the Amazon order, some type of proactive messaging, some kind of urgency that's driving people to do something now, it's adding value to the purchase, or it's offering some type of vague question that's creating some type of curiosity amongst the buyer. Remember, you are also a buyer on Amazon. How many of those messages do you open? Which ones catch your attention? Who's your buyer? How are you going to speak to them? Those are the types of questions you need to be asking yourself while trying to understand what messages will perform best for you and your products. Some best practices and things that you should try is to personalize your emails by speaking to the customer's name, their first name, their buyer name. Let them know that you know who they are. Use a product short name. Tools like Seller Labs in our communication center offer this feature so that you can communicate about your product without giving your 150 character title inside your email. This allows you to take your long title about an iPhone and call it an iPhone case, because that's what the customer bought. Your title was developed for other purposes such as SEO. One big question we get on a regular basis is questioning us about feedback and product reviews and when to ask for them. It's critical that you understand your product, how it's being used by your buyers, to understand when to send that message. If you're sending something that requires setup, maybe you want to send a message right at delivery with some instructions about that setup. If you're sending something like a vitamin or a supplement that has to be taken for 15, 30 days, then it's critical that you wait some period of time so that your customers can actually use your product. One of the best examples I like to give is toys. Toys have their highest perceived value when they arrive. I'm a father of 3. I can tell you, when a toy arrives at our house, we open up the package, the kids rip open the box, and they play with the toy. If you ask me my feedback 3 days later, that toy is now sitting in their room in the corner and it's not being used. So just think about how your product's being used and when the optimal time is to ask for that review. Using a tool like Seller Labs Pro, you can do A/B testing, We allow you to A/B test either the content of your message or your subject line. This will help you really drive the right message to your customers to get the optimal set of reviews that you want to get back from your customers. Remember, testing a subject line is testing against your open rate. Can you get more people to open the email? Testing your body content is testing against your call to action. Can you get more people to take action on your email, whether that's leave a review or anything else that you're asking? Around January of 2020, Amazon started rolling out what are called programmatic restrictions. Programmatic restrictions are limiting your ability to communicate proactively via the buyer-seller messaging tool. I wanted to cover this topic when talking about buyer-seller messaging because there's a few things that are misunderstood. One, having a restriction in buyer-seller messaging is not a suspension of your account. So if you get a buyer-seller messaging restriction, what's happened is that Amazon, in some type of programmatic way, has identified that one of your messages violates their guidelines. When that happens, you have a 30-day restriction, and you should go into your account and try to identify what is wrong with the messages that you're sending. I've asked Amazon, why do people get these restrictions? What's the number one reason? And what they shared with me was that the number one reason for getting these restrictions is that people ask for reviews too many times. So make sure that if you're providing a general email, you don't throw in at the end, P.S. if you like this product, please leave a review. Don't throw in, we'd love your feedback, please write a review. Make sure that only one of your messages is actually designed around asking for the review, and no other messages should do that. If you continue to violate Amazon's guidelines, you get a second restriction. The second restriction is a lifetime restriction, meaning you cannot proactively message. Now understand, proactive messaging means using a tool to automate messages or individually messaging your customers. You can still send critical messages to your customers, and you can still reply to customers to communicate with you. Let's review some best practices around buyer-seller messaging. Only send one email. Now, I've said throughout this presentation that there's reasons to send more than one email, but are you truly providing value to your customer in the second email that you send? And if you're going to send more than one email, make sure you're only asking for a review once. That's the critical part. There's no reason to send more than 2 messages. Anyone who's ever tried to convince me they need to send more than 2 messages is really just trying to go around the guidelines as they're written and try to get extra messages to their customer. Again, remember, you're a buyer on Amazon too. How many of these messages do you want in your inbox? Only use the important tag if you actually have a critical message. Amazon has designed the important tag, which is a bracket with the word important, and it doesn't matter if you use caps or lowercase, as a way for you to bypass and get a message to every one of your buyers. So let's say, for instance, you have a product that, if it sits out in the sun too long, could go bad. Maybe you need to send a critical message on the day the product's being delivered, or when the product's shipped, giving your customer a heads up and telling them that it's on the way and they shouldn't leave it outside. That is good customer service. Just don't include in that email the asking for a review. Anytime you use the important tag, it's important that you only have that message focus on the critical nature and the critical message you need to send to your buyer. Do not use suggestive language. Now, we talked about this before during our true false, but suggestive language is something that many years ago, lots of sellers were doing. And the problem is that you are using a tool such as Seller Labs to communicate with your customer, and you wrote an email and you haven't looked at that in a long period of time. It's important that you go back to your email and you look. And the best litmus test that you can use for suggestive language is an if-then statement. If you are making any type of if-then statement, you are providing suggestive language and you are trying to divert people one direction or the other. Be very neutral in the conversation and the tone at which you're communicating with your buyers. Now, we showed this again during the true false, but do not use any promotions or coupons. It's critical that you understand this and you don't try to go around this, because this is the number 2 reason why accounts are restricted. Sellers are constantly trying to use the communication tool to communicate and get more sales. That's not its purpose. The purpose is to communicate with the buyer about the purchase that they currently made. Many of us use attachments as a way to additionally communicate with our customers, maybe to add more value, maybe to give more information about our product. There's nothing wrong with using attachments, but remember that all of these rules apply to the attachment as well. So if your attachment includes links to your website, your phone number, maybe suggestive language or a coupon, all of those are also violations of the buyer-seller guidelines and can potentially get you restricted. So make sure you clean up any attachments that you have. Amazon issued a new tool through what's called the Solicitation API called Request a Review. Request a Review is a secondary way for you to communicate with your customers and ask for a review. If you have a buyer-seller messaging restriction, you can still use the Request a Review feature to ask for reviews. Right now, the Request a Review feature sits within Amazon's order detail page and requires you to manually click on each button. Seller Labs has built this into our tool, and we've automated this process using the APIs provided to us by Amazon. So you have the ability to either communicate through buyer-seller messaging or through Request a Review. Using a tool such as ours allows you to automate both of those. Let's recap what we learned today and maybe some actions we can take to help us in the future. 1, let's carve out 30 minutes to take a look at our messaging. We now understand that messaging clients is within the guidelines of Amazon. We've now learned that asking for a review is within the guidelines of communicating with Amazon. But let's go back and look at our messages and make sure that our messages are following those guidelines as well. Let's make sure that we're not including promotions or coupons. Let's make sure that we're not using suggestive language. Let's make sure that we're not including links to our website or links within our graphics and images. These are all things that will lead to a restriction and limit your ability to proactively communicate with customers. You can also work with providers such as Seller Labs to help identify potential issues within your email. If you are not sure, go ahead, reach out, communicate with us. We've worked with Amazon directly to understand what you can and can't do. Now, I want to be careful in what I say because we're not Amazon and we don't understand their algorithm. So it's ultimately your decision, but we'll help point things out to you that you may not be able to see. And just remember, what worked in the past isn't going to work in the future. Buyer-seller messaging is something you constantly need to be working on and constantly need to be improving. Thank you for joining me today as we talked about Amazon and buyer-seller messaging. If you have any questions, you can join me during office hours, and you can find all of Seller Labs apps inside the Amazon App Store. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.